Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Payal. Thank you so much, CRPG. And thank you so much, Pinky ji, for having me here. I mean, it is a pleasure to be a part of this forum in the WOW series, and, associated, being known as a chartered accountant itself, is a huge privilege. And, I was in the chartered accountancy role around, maybe 7 years back, where I was a part of the statutory audit, and that's where my CA capabilities were seen more. But for the last 3 years, I have been in very much varied roles. But I mean, being back here, is incredible for me. I mean, I really thank all of you to have me here. So just to give you a brief, the whole session, I have just broken it down into 3 parts. First is, I will also let you know something more about ESG, because this is a new subject. It is very important to understand the nitty-gritties of this subject first. I will let you know what are the different standards and frameworks which govern ESG, whether it is from a consulting role, or whether it is from an assurance role, or whether it is being a part of a corporate entity itself. And then we can understand step by step as to what are the roles you can perform as chartered accountants under advisory, under assurance, and under being, steering the ESG agenda, being in a corporate entity itself. So the first session is more about what is ESG. So let me take you through ESG. I'm sure many of you know the full form. It is environment, social, and governance. So basically, ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. These are the 3 basic pillars of ESG. These pillars itself, so environment, social, and governance pillars itself, has many more multiple non-financial factors that are considered. And these help us to evaluate a company's sustainability and the ethical impact. So for example, just to give you some examples, for environment, you may ask for emissions or water data, waste data. So these are the non-financial factors. For social, you may ask for what are the number of women employees, how do you treat the differently abled in your organization? So these are the parameters. And for governance, your parameters can be like, board's independence, how many executive, non-executive board, is your chairman independent or non-independent? So basically, all the factors like E, S, and G are enabling an organization to move towards a more fair, a more sustainable business. So just to elaborate here, the goal of ESG is to capture all the non-financial risks and opportunities that are inherent in a company in its day-to-day activities. So basically, ESG can bring about risks. It can impose certain risks, which we can mitigate, having better risk management framework within the organization. And also it gives us huge amount of opportunities, which we can explore. So for example, insurance company has a huge opportunity when it comes to ESG. So for example, if you just look at climate change, so today it is so evident, the floods that we are seeing, the heavy rainfall that we are seeing, the droughts that we are seeing is actually the impact of climate change. But for us, that might be detrimental, but for an insurance company's perspective, it is a huge opportunity in business itself. So ESG not only brings in risks, but also gives us huge amount of opportunities. So let me just take you a little bit deeper into each of these factors. This will actually enable us to understand as chartered accountants and as the training, the rigorous training that we all have gone through and the experience that we have in this field, are we really capable enough to take ESG as a role itself? So environmental factors. So environmental factors basically encompasses a range of aspects that actually impact a company and what the impact the company can make on its natural environment. So it looks at both the aspects as to what is the company making the impact on its natural environment, and also what is the company doing to promote sustainability. And here the company's activities can affect its ecosystem. So basically the external environment, it can affect climate change, It can affect resource utilization and also many other environmental considerations. So some of the non-financial factors that are actually considered when we look at environment are emissions. So this is something that many of you would have heard, the GHG emissions, which is greenhouse gases emissions. A subset of that is the carbon emissions. So greenhouse gas basically covers lots of different types of gases. Carbon emissions is only, I would say a larger part of the whole greenhouse gas emissions. The second aspect is climate change. Then there is water management. There is waste management. There is biodiversity and conservation. And there is energy efficiency. There are many more factors, but I have just brought out some of the most important factors which affect most of the companies. So these are the environmental factors. Now let us look at the social factors. What is social factors? Social factors are how the company can impact its employees, can impact its customers, can impact its suppliers, communities, and other stakeholders. So basically, these factors will enable us to understand as to how the company is treating its workforce, how is it able to support its communities, how is its relationship with its customers, how are they dealing with their suppliers, are they having fair practices to deal with their suppliers. So some of the non-financial factors which are considered under the social pillar are stakeholder engagement. Basically, stakeholders can be your investors, regulators, employees, suppliers, customers, etc. And how is a company or an entity actually engaging with its stakeholders, which is very, very important because we all operate in a cohesive environment. A company cannot operate in, solely. It has to collaboratively operate. Hence, it is important to engage with your stakeholders. So these stakeholders engagement actually enables a company to understand what is the impact the company is making on its stakeholders and what do these stakeholders actually expect from the organization. And then we can, the company is able to evolve its policies and take care of many other things. Health and safety, labor rights, human rights, employee engagement, employee development means employee training and development. How are you upskilling your employees? What are the benefits that you're giving your employees? That is in terms of, whether it is monetary or non-monetary, even the compensation, whether the compensation that is being paid is fair or no. Analysis of whether, a women employee and a male employee is actually getting equivalent salary, and so on and so forth. So it's not about equivalent, but it is about being fair. So that's the word actually. So it is about being fair. Then it comes to diversity and inclusion as to is your organization diverse enough? Means you have people, in terms of gender diversity, whether it is your, religious diversity, whether it is diversity in terms of the race, etc. And inclusion as to, are all employees in your organization treated equally? So even if there is a differently abled employee, does he have the similar amount of opportunity as any other employee in the organization? Does a female employee has, similar opportunities as any other employee in the organization has? So these kind of aspects. Then customer satisfaction, product safety. So is your customer really satisfied? What are the complaints that he has? Is your product, safe in terms of, including its end life also? So these are the aspects that are considered. Your supply chain assessments, so is your supply chain or is your value chain ESG compliant? Does your supply chain also follow all these aspects that we are discussing here? So, does your supplier also have low emissions? Is your supplier taking care of its water and waste properly? Does your supplier have a good human rights policy? So all these aspects also should be considered. And the last but not the least is community engagement, which I'm sure many of us know. The CSR is something that under the Companies Act also is regulated, and many of us would be aware about it in much detail. But many a times it so happens, ESG is I would say the word sometimes becomes so irreplaceable. People start thinking that ESG is CSR. CSR or corporate social responsibility is a very, very small part of the whole ambit of ESG. So you can see ESG has 3 pillars. Of the 3 pillars, in one of the pillars, CSR is just a part of a component. So not that it is not important, it is definitely very, very important, but it's not the whole. There is much more to ESG than just talking about your emissions or just talking about CSR. It has many more things to it. Lastly, governance. So governance basically is on evaluating what are the structures that are in place, what are the policies that are in place, what are the processes that are in place. And obviously, a good governance structure helps, decision-making, oversight, and accountability. And definitely, having a stronger governance is going to bring, will help us adhere to the principles of transparency, accountability, and ethical code of conduct. So some of the factors under the ESG that are considered for governance pillar are like board independence. What is the composition of the board? So there are regulatory requirements with respect to having women directors as well. But however, is it are you just complying to the regulatory requirement, or is it that is the women director also given equal opportunity and equal say in the boardroom? That is what is more important. What is your executive pay compensation? So, does your CEO or does your MD get such a high salary, which is like, 100 times the one, the junior most employees? That should not be the scenario. The executive compensation also has to be fair. Your anti-corruption, bribery measures, what is the whistleblower protection mechanism that you have inside your organization? How is your risk management framework? Whether it is strong enough, does it consider these ESG risks that we are talking about? Is all of this included in your risk management framework, which is already in place? Do you have cybersecurity policies? Do you have data protection? And so it's not just about having policies, but how many are the cybersecurity attacks that have happened in your organization? And what are the mitigating measures that you're taking against this? Is there any proactive actions that the organization have taken, against the cybersecurity? Definitely auditing, assurance, and having internal controls is also part of the governance system. Having ethics and having a code of conduct is one more. So these are just a few aspects which I thought I'll bring across to you all. I hope, at least in terms of definition, what is ESG and what it really encompasses of is clear to everybody. I'll just move on to the next slide. So I will just want to take a step back and talk a little bit about sustainability. So before the ESG, so-called, in double hyphen, I would want to put the word ESG as, which has taken so much of momentum in the last 2 years. I would not have seen a front page of a newspaper without having the word ESG in the last 1 year. But before ESG actually took up this momentum, there was a terminology which was prevalent for a very, very long time, which is sustainability. So basically, let us just take a step back and see what does this sustainability really means. Sustainability involves meeting your current needs without compromising future generations. And I'm sure sustainability is a word that we all hear today so often because, sustainable living, sustainable products, sustainable lifestyle. This is something that we all hear very commonly now. So the pillars of sustainability are environmental protection, which is your planet, means taking care of your planet. Having social equity means taking care of your people, and people definitely again encompasses of all, employees, customers, suppliers, community, etc. And having economic viability, which is profit. So when we used to talk about this term sustainability, we used to talk from 3 angles, which is planet, people, and profit. And balancing all these aspects in a long term, is what was known as sustainability. What is known as sustainability is what I would want to put it as. And this is what, we continue to do this till today, but just the term has got replaced. And if you look at a very important difference between what is ESG and what is sustainability includes profit, which is economic viability. but the word ESG does not include economic viability. Okay, so ESG is, so that's the striking difference between the two. But however, in today's world, I think both the words have become so synonymous to each other. So that's how it is. Let me just move on to the next slide. Okay, yeah, sorry. So why should a company actually disclose ESG information? Let us understand this. So now we've understood what is ESG, what is sustainability, and we all know why is it becoming so important. So as CA Arpit also mentioned right in the beginning itself, decision making, ESG has become extremely important in decision making, whether it is your boardroom, whether it is your investor, whether it is your regulator, whether even if it is your employees internally, whether it is your supplier, whether it is your customer. Everybody is asking, are you doing something on ESG? Are you ESG compliant? अरे भाई तुम्हारे emissions ठीक है ना, बहुत ज्यादा तो नहीं है ना, carbon emissions are fine or no? So these are certain questions which are very much prevalent in today's world. So let me just give you an angle, from three perspectives. So regulators, from a compliance perspective, they are asking you for ESG information. The best example we have today is the SEBI. The SEBI has introduced the BRSR, which is, a compliance requirement today. BRSR is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. I will, talk about it in detail a little bit later as well. Definitely then investors give you access to capital, and investors are asking for ESG information today. And it is a very, very important, decision-making aspect in the today's world. Definitely ESG rating analysts. So you all would have heard about these ESG rating analysts like, MSCI, Sustainalytics, FTSE for Good, CDP, these names. So these are some of the ESG rating analysts, who give you these ratings. So it is, certain companies give you from 0 to 100, certain gives you A, B, C. So you're rated basically. And this definitely gives, and these ratings are analyzed by your investors. They are looked upon by investors. And definitely, this is a competitive world. Having a better ESG rating is going to give you a better, edge amongst your peers. So these are the primary reasons which I could put out as to why our company is disclosing ESG information in the today's world. Definitely. Now let me come to, why as chartered accountants, I believe that we can be really instrumental in, being very instrumental in the ESG success. So the clear word here is creating accountability. The word is so close to us, creating accountability is what, we are made from, right? From when we began our education as chartered accountants, this was something which is very critical to us. So definitely ESG auditing or assurance. So in the non-financial world or in the ESG sustainability kind of an arena, auditing is known as assurance most commonly. Definitely. And as chartered accountants, our profession itself teaches us that how we bring so much of clarity, whether it is in any piece of work that we do, we try to bring more and more clarity. And definitely chartered accountants can help bring more clarity to investors, to employees, to customers, and to any other stakeholders are using this ESG information. We all can see that there is a huge rush to decarbonize the global economy. So decarbonizing means that, you're trying to reduce your carbon emissions, going towards a world which is net zero, and so on and so forth. And this ESG information is important because, obviously, if you're saying that I'm going to become net zero by 2050, I mean, some information has to show or has to be shown as proof that, how are you becoming net zero by 2050? So there has to be a disclosure mechanism. There has to be some data around it, right? And who else but, chartered accountants can bring clarity or accuracy around this data. So definitely, as I mentioned earlier, this topic ESG has become the top agenda in the boardrooms. Many major investors today, especially in the Europe and US, are making investments into more environmentally sustainable companies and activities. Not only Europe, US, but even Indian investors are definitely looking at ESG in a very, very big way. And I really believe this, that to succeed, ESG requires accurate and transparent reporting, and which is where chartered accountants have a very, very important role to play. So with this note, let me just take you ahead in this. Okay, so I'll also want to bring across one more important thing here is, let's see how, the sustainability function. So now in the last previous slide, we spoke a little bit about, what auditing role can a chartered accountant play. Now let us understand, even if you are in a corporate function, you see the sustainability function. I'm not sure whether how clear this slide will be, but I'll just summarize this. This chart is actually trying to show how different functions in an organization are going to change in the next 3 years. So what we see here is that, after in today and in the coming 3 years, the three functions which are going to play very important role are, finance, strategy, risk, sustainability, and corporate communications. So definitely finance after 3 years is going to, really top the rank. But equivalently, the next number there happens to be the sustainability or the corporate responsibility function. So in both ways, you can see that, it brings a whole evolution together, saying that, how sustainability, finance, strategy, risk, these all happen to be very important functions. And unless and until all these functions work cohesively in a corporate environment, it is very difficult to achieve success, whether it is in ESG or a success in the organization itself. There are certain global expectations that are coming around with ESG. Okay, so in ESG, initially it used to be taken up in a very lighter note. People used to talk about it, but it used to not be so widespread. But now, as there are so many regulators who are looking at it, investors who are looking at it, the global expectations are also changing with time. So now everybody wants a perspective which is beyond frameworks and beyond data reporting. So it's not just कि भाई आपने जो किया है पूरे साल में वो एक report में लिख के दे दो बस काम खत्म. No, it has become more. They are saying that I want consistent data, I want clear data, I want accurate data. And I want a perspective. It's just not about disclosing, but I want you to do something for ESG. Meaningful disclosures on climate change, definitely it is the need of the hour. And obviously the global expectation is that you have enough information on climate change. Very clear clarity on future risks and opportunities, which ESG is going to bring about. There is a new focus on S and G. So I'll just take 2 minutes and elaborate on this point. ESG, again, environment, social and governance pillar. Earlier in initial times, sustainability or ESG used to be very much correlated with environment. मतलब ESG बोला तो मतलब आपने कितना waste generate किया, आपने कितना पानी consume किया, what are your emissions? It's just that. But it's not just that. E pillar is just one pillar of the three pillars. The other two pillars are S and G, social factors and governance factors. And which I feel, the social factors and governance factors are so beautifully taught in our CA curriculum itself. Governance, definitely, yes. And even social pillars, if you see here and there, many places it touches upon. So I think we as chartered accountants are very much capable of, steering this ESG agenda. And I believe that we really understand this. The next aspect is an emphasis on materiality and meaningful assessment of materiality. So I'll just step back and just explain you what is materiality. Please, everybody who might be here coming from an audit background, would be associating materiality with in a different terminology. Definitely, it is very correlated. So in ESG, materiality basically means focus areas. So, for one company, what are your ESG related focus areas is what is meaning of materiality in terms of ESG. I'll just give you a very quick example here. So for example, for a manufacturing company, the ESG focus areas will be, climate change, will be the emissions that they are making, because they have such a huge manufacturing facility. Let me just take iron and steel industry. Such a huge iron and steel industry they have refactories, they have furnaces, etc. And all these are emitting so much of emissions, carbon emissions. मतलब ऊपर जो काला रंग का धुआं दिखता है, so, whenever you're around a steel factory, you will be seeing that, right? So, there is so much of, it's so important for them. And for any person who is looking from an ESG perspective on that iron and steel industry company, you will always think that emissions to इनके लिए बहुत ही ज़्यादा important चीज़ है. It's a focus area for them. Just let me reverse this. For example, if I take this in a service industry, for a service industry, emissions, do you think it is important? No, they don't have any factory. They don't have any manufacturing facility. They all are sitting, in a high-rise office in, Mumbai or Delhi, and, just working on their laptops. That's about it. So emissions will not be important for them, but there will be other aspects which are important for them, like their employee engagement, their employee development, because their manpower is their resource. So this is what it is. So ESG that way is very very meaningful and practical, because they say that every company has to have its own material issues. This is one more area where I believe that chartered accountants can be very critical in understanding, or assessing this materiality. There is a complete methodology as to how we arrive at these material issues for every organization. It is just not by judgment, but it is, there is a whole methodology and a process to it that has to be followed. Then definitely the next, what are the global expectations are that there has to be management fluency in terms of ESG matters. As you all know that ESG has become a top boardroom agenda. However, yes, any person or any stakeholder who is looking at ESG from, external person, he feels that, yes, your board has to be in a part of the ESG matters that are going on in your organization, because everything flows from the top to down. So it's very important for us to have management fluency. Definitely. And the last and the most important from the perspective that we all are here today, ESG information is required now to be transparent, to be consistent, and to be assured. So this is where, we as chartered accountants can play a very, very critical role. Then I just want to bring across this slide as well to you all. This is talking about any ESG or any sustainability journey that an organization begins, okay, a company begins. It has to have, 4 aspects. So you have to have a strategy towards ESG. You have to have performance improvement towards ESG. There has to be decent sustainable finance towards ESG. And there has to be disclosures towards ESG. So this is what is important. I think any of you who would be following, these ESG groups or following LinkedIn on ESG or be connected with any people who are in ESG, many of you would have seen this slide. This actually is trying to bring across that there are so many, frameworks, standards, scorecards, rating agencies, credit rating agencies, sector benchmarks, so many frameworks around ESG is unbelievable. And, most of them are a replica of each other, to be very frank. And, so this is something I thought let us bring across. I will also take you through different standards very briefly. And, we can understand as to what role as chartered accountants we can actually play in these. So this is my first session, which explained about what is ESG. Very quickly, if there are any questions with respect to the first session, I'll be happy to take it up here.
Ma'am, I've posted on your personal chat all the questions. I think 6 of them till now. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first question is, why is cybersecurity so important in governance, and how is it connected to ESG? Okay, so I'll tell you, data plays a very, very important role in ESG because, data is critical to any organization. This is something that, we all have learned. So hence, if there are cyber attacks which are made and, this data is captured, then obviously it is going to be critical. So please understand ESG, you can't connect everything in very literal terms, but because of the data, ensuring that the data is credible, the data is secured, and that's why we believe that cybersecurity plays an important role in protecting the data in an organization. So ESG is an upper bar. It actually looks at the whole organization as a whole, and that's why I consider cybersecurity to be important. I hope I have answered your question. Yeah. Second question.
Fire, it will be great if you can ask and if he can answer. Then it will be, I think.
Yeah, sure. The next question here is BRSR and ESG the same in India? So let me just tell you what this means. So BRSR is just a disclosure mechanism, which is laid down by SEBI, which is mandated for the top 1,000 listed companies. So BRSR is just I would say it as a framework where companies have to report information related to ESG. So BRSR is just a disclosure format. ESG is a very big thing. So basically, अगर मैं ये कहूँ, कि accounts के अंदर अगर आपको SEBI ने एक फॉर्म भेज दिया कि ये information मुझे चाहिए account से related, आप please ये मुझे भर के भेजिए. So this doesn't mean that accounts and the form which is sent by SEBI becomes the same. So I'm saying in a very crude terminology, but this is what it means. So ESG is a subject. Okay, BRSR is a disclosure form which is given by SEBI, which needs to be filled by the top 1,000 listed companies in India and submitted to SEBI. That's the difference between BRSR, and that's what ESG means.
The next question is, ma'am, can we provide services to the company in assistance for getting ratings from MSCI and Sustainalytics, etc.?
Definitely we can. Definitely we can. Because basically what happens is MSCI, Sustainalytics, they provide a form, and we as advisors or consultants can be advisors in assessing as to how these companies can fill up these forms for these rating agencies.
Okay. So which are the best rating companies and which are the reports as a CA we would need to get educated? Are there any course or details to learn from?
Okay.
So I think this can be answered in the end.
No
right?
problem. Yeah, I think this is something that we can answer in the end, actually.
Yeah, okay. So another question is, you mentioned that under the pillars of ESG, evaluation of company activities and how they affect the ecosystem is mentioned. However, the TCFD framework, including the latest IFRS, talks about the financial impact of sustainability related risk and opportunities rather than other way around. So can you elaborate on this?
I will actually take this up. I have a slide on the TCFD framework. So
Okay.
I'll definitely take this question up during that.
Priyanka.
Yeah.
So can you suggest a step-by-step guide to start a practice in EA? I think this is also a last question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can go to the next session. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly take you all through the different standards and frameworks and the different ESG ratings which are prevalent today. These can be global. These are Indian also. So I have included both here because India ESG is still evolving in a very big way. Okay, so where did the momentum begin? Momentum actually began very, very way back. But actually the most prevalent one, which it is very evident, was which started through the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN has given 17 Sustainable Development Goals, to eradicate poverty, hunger, for well-being, quality education, gender equality, partnership for the goals, peace and justice, life on land, on water, climate action, etc. So this is where actually I would say the sustainability started becoming a global agenda. Okay, and many of the entities actually signed up to these UNSGDs. That's how they are most commonly known as. And many companies signed up. And every year they started publishing reports as to, disclose as to how these companies are actually adhering or following, some of these goals. So every company need not follow all 17 goals. You can follow 1, 2, or maybe may not be, you may choose, to part your ways even from these goals. But definitely at that time, it was a big momentum, and that is how this all actually began. Now, let me just take you through the different standards and frameworks that are actually prevalent in, in the ESG space. These are the most common ones. Believe me, there are more than 20, 25 standards and frameworks, and it will be very difficult to cover all of them. But here I have just tried to bring in the most prevalent ones, the ones which are used the most. So firstly, I will want to begin with SEBI's BRSR itself. So definitely this tries to explain the sustainability information. The themes are again around environment, social, and governance. As I told you, this currently is for the top 1,000 listed companies, and then it is going to definitely keep increasing as time passes by. And the audience is regulatory currently. This is the first year of reporting, mandatory reporting, which is still not got over. There are companies still releasing their BRSRs in a big way. So, we really don't know as to, how much will this information of the BRSR, which is the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, used by stakeholders like investors and maybe your, employees, or maybe your communities, etc. Then is the EU Sustainability Reporting Standards. This is very prevalent in the European nation. There are more than 50,000 entities or companies which are reporting against this. And this is definitely mandatory in the EU for all companies who have 500 plus employees, or their shares are publicly traded. And the audience there, definitely, again, since it is mandated, regulators are using it the most. And definitely, since the regulator is controlling this, there are many stakeholders also who use this data. Then there is the United Nations Forum for Sustainability Standards. Again, the information is ESG and sustainability reporting. Not a very widely used framework, but it's a UN prescribed framework. It is best for all industries, and many national and international bodies use this framework. Then comes the IIRC, which is the integrated report. Many of you would have heard about this. So this includes, again, financial information as well, because your information with respect to your value creation model and ESG and financial, so the annual reports that are released, even that gets merged into the integrated report, and one holistic report, which is giving information on finance, ESG, sustainability, all come together. Globally, there are approximately 5,000 entities who are disclosing information with respect to the integrated report. And this is best used by the investors. Definitely, there are regulatory bodies and accountancy firms also, who are the stakeholder audience for the IIRC. Then I will come over to the TCFD, which is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. This definitely discloses information a bit on ESG, because climate task force TCFD is divided into 4 metrics. It also discloses information on risks management. It discloses information on your governance. It discloses information on strategy, and it discloses information on your climate risk assessment. Whoever asked this question, give me a minute. I will answer your question in the upcoming slide. I'm talking a little bit more detailed there. This is currently being used by almost 2,600 organizations. Apart from this, there are many organizations who support TCFD. So even they use this. Many of the large companies in India and globally have taken up the task of doing TCFD. And the largest audience, even for TCFD, happens to be the investors. then definitely, still upcoming, but International Sustainability Board, IFRS, is releasing sustainability related standards. And this will include information around sustainability, accounting, risks and opportunities. It is still to come out, so we don't know number of participants who will actually be, a part of this framework. And this is best for medium to large companies because this requirement of standards is difficult for a smaller organization to fulfill. The audience will be right from investors to CFOs to financial organizations, and also other stakeholders as well will be using this elaborately. Then comes the CDP. Most of you all would have heard about this Carbon Disclosure Project. Some people call this as a rating, some people call it as a framework, but actually this is a standard and a framework. This is a way how an organization can disclose its information related to climate, supply chain, forest, and water. There are almost 9,600 participants. When you're applying for CDP, you can either go in for a scoring mechanism or you can go only for a disclosure mechanism. So if you go in for a scoring mechanism, you are scored. So A, B, C, A plus, B plus, C, D, etc. Those are the kind of scorings that you get on CDP. This is best for medium to large size companies. And they require much detailed information. And many investors and the supply chain or the value chain actually uses information with respect to CDP. Then is the B Corp. This is again a sustainability related standard. This focuses more on social impact actually. There are still definitely less than 4,000 participants who actually are a part of B Corp. This is more suitable to a small to a medium size companies, and the stakeholder audience generally happens to be everybody can refer this. Then comes the GRI. I'm sure many of you, if have read anything little, or have any information about sustainability, ESG reporting, etc., or who have read BRSR, would be knowing about GRI. GRI is a global reporting initiative, and this is the most globally renowned standard or framework which is used for sustainability reporting today. And the themes are general. It encompasses completely on every aspect of ESG. It encompasses even sustainability pillar of profit. So economic viability is also something that it considers. So, and it has multiple indicators. It has, huge series of standards which are prescribed. And as I told you, this is the most globally accepted and recognized standard. More than 10,000 participants are there. Today in India, any company which is, most of the companies I would put it as, who are making a sustainability report or a ESG report, definitely follow GRI. And it is best for any type of organization, whether it is a small, medium, or a large organization, listed, non-listed, private, public, anything. And the stakeholder audience, again, is, all stakeholders who can refer this. Then comes the SASB, as issued by the Value Reporting Foundation. Now, the SASB, GRI, and the IFRS all are, will very soon get merged, and we should be having a global standard in place soon. But that's something which is in process and still evolving. So SASB basically focuses more on ESG related financial risks, and it is looked at investors largely, and it is best for large companies because it has such critical and indicators, KPIs and indicators which probably a small company or a medium company will not be able to adhere to, which is why you can see the number of participants really, or people who are actually following SASB are approximately 800 globally. Then definitely comes on, the ISOs, which, they range everybody who is reporting on emissions. Most of the organizations follow the ISO 14,000 series guidelines for their environmental management systems. And so hence you can see that there are almost 450,000 plus people who actually follow ISO 14,000 series standards for their ESG and environmental management systems disclosures or verifications. This is suitable for all type of organizations. The stakeholder also happens to be investors, regulators, etc. Very briefly, coming to ESG ratings, I mean, already there were a number of questions which were around the ESG ratings. So DJSI, I'll just state the full form. It is Dow Jones Sustainability Index. MSCI is no longer, doesn't have a full form anymore. FTSE for good, Sustain Analytics, CSR Hub. These are some of the most commonly available ESG ratings, which you can, see globally, and even Indian companies are rated in this. Every rating agency has a different mechanism as to, whether a company is invited or the company is rated automatically, or the company has to apply and ask for a form and get rated. So there can be three different scenarios across all rating agencies. And the only support, that a chartered accountant can give, while working around these ESG ratings can be only support in helping an organization to fill up these forms, which are shared by the rating agencies. And it's just a consulting or an advisory support that you can finally do. Or you can also help them as to analyze how they can improve their score. So for example, if DJSI has rated an organization at 70, you can advise an organization as to how you think you can reach from 70 to 80. Or 80 to, that's about it. So apart from this, there is no other, support per se that you can provide to companies who are getting rated by these rating agencies. Now, let me just state a few standards which are globally and Indian standards that are present for an assurance provider. So till now, the standards that which I mentioned in the previous slides were more from a perspective of a company. So if a company wants to disclose its ESG information, what is it that it should follow? So since it has to follow, so we as chartered accountants, if we take up a role, of being an advisor or an assurance provider, we should be aware about what is the standard or framework is the company where we are going to provide advisory role or going to do assurance. We should also know these standards very well. So if I'm talking that if I'm going to, do an assurance of a sustainability report, which is prepared using the GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative, me as a consultant or an assurance provider should be very much aware about, the GRI itself. So now I'm just going to take you through a few standards which are available for assurance globally. So it is the International Standard on Assurance Engagements, ISAE 3000 revised, and also in consonance with assurance engagements on other than audits or review of historical financial information. So these standards can be used also. International Standard on Assurance Engagements, ISC 3410, which is on assurance engagements for greenhouse gas statements, which is the GHG emissions, which I was talking about. Then comes the International Standard on Quality Assurance 5000. This is just a standard as to what best kind of assurance can be provided. Then is the AA 1000 Assurance Standard, which is issued by the Accountability Institute. This also, many of the organizations use AA 1000. Then comes the ISO standards, 14,000 series, which through which verification certification can be provided for the environmental related information like your greenhouse gases, etc., etc. So these are some of the global standards which are prevalent around for assurance. Definitely, there are counterpart Indian standards as well. SAE 3000 issued by ICAI, again SAE 3410 issued by ICAI, which is related to assurance engagements on sustainability information and assurance engagements on greenhouse gas statements correspondingly. We also have sustainability reporting maturity model, which also, the information, it is basically a model where we can actually evaluate as to how the company is doing, right? Information from the BRSR can be extracted and scoring can be provided and assess as to how a company is doing basis this model. Then definitely there is the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of ICI has issued the social audit standards, which ranges from SAS 100 to, 1600. So this is also something which is prevalent. So these are the different assurance standards or, which can be followed while we are looking at providing assurance with respect to the non-financial information. So when we come to assurance, there are certain critical terminologies that is used in the ESG, ambit. Audit is generally called as assurance, and the terms that are used are not ESG or sustainability everywhere. It is non-financial information. So, there are other standards which are prescribing, the financial information, and these are the standards which are prescribing as to how we can audit or assure non-financial information. So, just a few terminologies to be kept in mind when we are talking about this kind of assurance. Definitely in globally, the types of assurance that are accepted under, non-financial information is limited assurance and reasonable assurance. Just a few things about limited assurance. This is very similar to the limited reviews that are done in, audit per se. So basically, this is a baseline level of insurance. This gives you sufficient and appropriate evidence, and you will be, involved in assessing a sustainability report or a GHG footprint or any other non-financial data. So just let me take a step back and just explain you this here, that आप assurance करने किसका जाओगे? Let me just explain this because, I think that would be coming in, some people's mind. What information are we going to audit, or is there a report? मतलब हम तो statutory audit में तो we used to audit, financial report. मतलब client आके balance sheet P&L देगा, हम उसके पीछे फिर हम audit करेंगे. तो अब इसमें क्या करेंगे? So let me just tell you, companies have a practice of making a sustainability report or an ESG report. Okay, so these reports actually disclose information with respect to your ESG or sustainability performance. Now, BRSR is another example of a sustainability report. अभी बस ये बात है कि BRSR is mandated by the SEBI. So I can put ESG is a broader level thing. ESG के subject के अंदर there are different disclosures which are made by various companies. तो किसी कंपनी ने, अभी मैं लिस्टेड कंपनी हूँ, ठीक है, मैंने BRSR डिस्क्लोज किया, ये सेबी ने बोला ऐसा ऐसा फॉर्म है, ये फॉर्म में मुझे सब कुछ भरना है, ये भर के आई एम डिस्क्लोजिंग इट. Very good. One company says, "Arey, I am not a part of the 1000 listed companies, but I am doing very well. My investor is asking me for information. Let me make a sustainability report and disclose it." So he is disclosing a sustainability report. There is another company who is saying that my investor is not asking me information about ESG, but he is asking me information about my emissions. So he will say कि ठीक है, I will not disclose any of this. I am going to disclose only GHG footprint report. So उसमें मेरे कार्बन एमिशंस कितने हैं. तो ये 3 डिफरेंट टाइप की रिपोर्ट्स हो गई. वन इज अ BRSR, वन इज अ सस्टेनेबिलिटी रिपोर्ट एंड वन इज अ GHG फुटप्रिंट रिपोर्ट. ये तीनों रिपोर्ट का अश्योरेंस is what these standards which were there in the previous slides are asking us to do. Okay, so as chartered accountants, we can carry out assurance services for BRSR, and I'll tell you the mandate as well around the BRSR and all these, whether it is mandatory, non-mandatory in the upcoming slides, but just to give you a gist and a background before I talk about limited and reasonable assurance. Okay, so I can, as chartered accountants, we can do assurance for BRSR, for sustainability report, and for GHG footprinting report, or it can be for any other non-financial data as well. कोई बोलेगा कि भाई मुझे इतना सारा नहीं कुछ ऑडिट कराना है, मुझे बस एक पीस थोड़ा सा ऑडिट कराना है, मुझे ये बता दो कि मेरा what is my diversity and inclusion? So, what number of employees, male, female, at which all levels they are, etc. There are companies who want only that much limited amount of assurance to be done on only very specific non-financial data as well. Some will say कि नहीं भाई मुझे बस वेस्ट का जो डेटा है ना वो ऑडिट करके दे दो, अश्योर करके दे दो, जस्ट वाटर का डेटा अश्योर करके दे दो. So this also happens. Okay. So now with this background, let me again just step back into this two types of assurance: limited assurance, reasonable assurance. Limited assurance, as the name itself mentions, that it is going to give you only sufficient and appropriate evidence. It is a baseline kind of an assurance. Many of the organizations today in India are going in only for limited assurance. The reason being that the organizations don't have that level of preparedness inside itself. मतलब किसी के पास उतना डेटा ही आज के दिन में अवेलेबल नहीं है, unless and until we are talking about those really big companies like Tata and so on, who have been doing sustainability for almost 15 to 20 years now. So the ITC, the Tatas, these were some of the companies who were doing ESG and sustainability for last 15 years. But what about others? I mean, we are talking about the larger group, right? So not many have that kind of data. Hence, the scope today is more for limited assurance. And, how will the assurance be done? Basically, through interview management, through analytical procedures, and evaluate the internal control for data collection. So these are some of the basic steps which can give you, which can help you in providing a limited assurance. Now, let me just step back and just explain you something a little bit more about reasonable assurance. So reasonable assurance is the highest level of assurance which is currently possible. Absolute assurance is not impossible, actually. So we all adhere by the concepts of materiality and all of that. So definitely absolute assurance is not possible. Reasonable assurance is the highest level of assurance today for non-financial information. And the key differentiator, which is globally said, is the site visits, to be very frank, but there are many more aspects also. But generally, if you read any article today or try to ask anybody the difference, they will say the sites visit is the key differentiator. So with this type of audit, means the audit of a reasonable assurance, the assurer will provide more evidence to demonstrate that the sustainability report / I have not written BRSR, but I'm adding the / as BRSR, or the GHG report is free of any material misstatement. So what all aspects will this include? Control testing, assessing and responding to risks, evidence gathering, data verification, evaluation of assumptions, methods used to calculate emissions. So there is a huge, so as I told you earlier as well, the data management currently with respect to non-financial information is extremely weak in the Indian scenario, especially. Okay, so the organizations are still, like getting ready to face an assurance of non-financial information today. But definitely there are processes on, there is a lot of automation or technology that is coming in place, to capture the non-financial information. Especially. And the biggest challenge when, again, if I just step back and look at from an ESG perspective. So E is environment, social and governance. Abhi data सबसे difficult किसमें होगा? Governance, no challenge, data is available. Secretarial department के पास जाओ, almost सारा data मिल ही जाएगा. There is no challenge there, nearly no challenge there. Social is reasonably well placed because HR information is very, very strong in most of the organizations. Employees, male, female, gender diversity, differently abled, fair, pay structures, compensations, etc. are there in terms of employees. Community engagement, because CSR also getting mandated under various frameworks and standards, people have decent information with respect to the community engagements also. Supplier data, customer data, basic numbers तो मिल जाएंगे भाई, हमारे इतने suppliers हैं, अगर आप उसको zone wise distribute कर दो तो वो सब तो मिल जाएगा. But when it gets to more critical indicators like how many of your suppliers are getting assessed on ESG information, please, give us data with respect to the emissions of your suppliers. So these kind of data is still not prevalent in India, but definitely many companies are on the path. Information with respect to customer satisfaction or customer feedbacks, I would say reasonably available. Matlab, full fledged nahi hoga, but 30-40% to data mil hi jata hai. So social is also, I would say, 60%, 70% there in terms of data. E pillar, your environment pillar is, I would say the biggest problem factor here. It's very difficult to capture data because, it's such a ground level data. And agar aap matlab emissions ko hi dekh lo, so I don't know, I mean, I don't want to go too much into technical, but the data of understanding how much electricity is generated, wo to electricity bill se mil jata hai, no doubt about it. Electricity is the easiest one, but something like DG sets, so just to give you an example, emissions come out of diesel. Okay, so DG sets jo companies use karti hain, that comes in your scope 1 emissions. And information around those DG sets is so difficult to get, it is next to impossible. No company will, be able to tell perfectly as to how much is the diesel that I have poured into the DG set to ensure that when, to operate my DG set. It is very difficult. In and out consumption becomes very difficult. And not only this, there are many methodologies to calculate these emissions as well. So, there are different ISO standards, there are GHG protocols, etc. So everything has a different methodology. तो किसी के लिए तुम्हें consumption चाहिए, किसी के लिए gate in चाहिए, किसी के लिए gate out चाहिए, किसी के लिए actual production चाहिए. So it is little technical there. I really don't want to get into too much of those technical aspects because then we will lose the interest here then. So E pillar is, something which is very difficult to find data, but I mean, I hope that, with the technology also playing so much role and, people taking this really seriously, I'm sure, the efficiency of maintaining this data is going to go much more high in the times to come. Okay, so this is the end of my second session, and so this was more related to what are the different standards and frameworks which are available. So I'll be happy to take up certain questions which are relating to this. The questions which I have left in the previous one, I will ensure that I cover it at the end or during the next session. Yeah.
So, ma'am, yeah. So CS Shama is writing that you mentioned many technologies are getting developed. So can you name few of them which can be used to capture the ESG data?
Yes, so there are many, so basically companies like SAP, companies like Diginex, companies like Sustain Plus, and many more are coming up with softwares which can actually be used, to capture this kind of ESG related data. So these are the technologies which are coming in place, and definitely to capture the ground level data, it is a different scenario altogether, as to how to capture what is the emissions from the air conditioner, आपने कितना refill किया है air conditioner में, ये सब तो छोटी-छोटी technologies हैं which like meter reading डालो and वो सब. So that is more implementation. But to capture the holistic ESG data, there are these like SAP, etc., who are coming into ensuring that how this data is captured, like financial data. So वो data entry तो करना ही पड़ेगा किसी को, but it is just that all the data gets collated in one place. That's about it.
So there's another question from CS Sailesh. He says we have done more than 4 limited assurance services for ESG. It mentioned that only for BOD, but company wants to provide that report to other entities like EcoVadis, and can we allow the client to provide that?
So if it is definitely yes, because it is a document which is getting publicly disclosed, right? So if you are giving assurance services for ESG and you would have assured a sustainability report which is already in the public domain, and your sustainability EcoVadis assessment actually asks you whether your report is assured or no, and people have to upload. So you are allowed to allow the client to provide it to any other entity because it is a certified document, right? So जैसे assurance report, अगर आपकी non-financial information की assurance report, how it is publicly available, In a similar way, even assurance report of ESG information can be publicly disclosed.
Okay. So, Mr. Parikshit Menon, he writes that international frameworks will international sustainability standards, IFRS S1 and S2, and sustainability disclosure taxonomy bring the much needed consolidation and become the de facto global integrated financial disclosure standard moving forward.
Absolutely. So that is the intention, and we also hope that that is what is going to happen. But Parikshit, just to mention that this is really going to take huge amount of time, because by the time the IFRS standards are actually released, it is going to be 2024, and it really needs to get mandated to understand whether all these frameworks are going to get integrated or no. And I'm sure that this is going to take at least a minimum of, I would say like 5 to 6 years for everything to get integrated and all entities to start following a single standard. But definitely the vision is that the IFRS standards will integrate all the other sustainability disclosures as well, along with the financial disclosures also. So that is again a step further and will take some more time.
Okay. So, Nikita writes, what are the rules or guidelines around the professionals performing ESG audit? And are there any independence requirements from the audit teams or statutory auditors are allowed to take up such engagements?
Generally, what I have understood is that if you are already doing a statutory audit, you are not, people don't take up audit related to the non-financial information. Technically, if there are any regulations, personally, I'm sorry, but I'm not into the field of completely into auditing right now. I'm more in a consulting role. So, if CA Payal, if you would be able to, because this is regulatory, I don't want to comment on anything which.
So I think I am not sure, but I think you cannot accept both the roles as a statutory auditor and as well as the auditor for ESG. The same applies like for internal audit as well as for this. I am not sure for this.
So we can definitely come back on this.
Yeah, we will come back on this. Yeah.
I will ask our central committee member, central council member to clear about this, whether we can do social audit as well as statutory audit of a firm. Because in case of internal audit, we can't do internal audit and statutory audit of the same company. Even if we are statutory auditor, we can't do any other audit of that company other than tax audit only. So for ESG, we should ask.
Okay, thank you. About that. Mr. Sailesh writes, where can I find methodology standards for determining the materiality for ESG?
So you can refer the GRI standard. GRI 302 is the one which will give you more information on the materiality with respect to ESG. GRI is Global Reporting Initiative is the only standard which prescribes a methodology for materiality. So you can refer GRI 302 for materiality.
Okay. So Benaz writes, will a typical ESG audit role involve a lot of traveling to rural areas? So, and what are the roles one, can look there, more data analysis and consulting and less of auditing?
So not really. I will not put it as a lot of traveling to rural places. So basically, if you're auditing any non-financial information of a company, you are not required to. You may maximum visit their sites or factories to get their data. You are still not involved in going. मतलब अगर वो कोई CSR activity कर रहा है, तो अगर वो कोई village में पानी के pump install कर रहा है, तो you don't need to go and visit that particular village to look at that. So that is not the level of assurance that we need to go into, but definitely visiting the sites is required when you are doing a reasonable assurance. And the role that you can look as an auditor is, very similar to what you do in your statutory audits or tax audits or internal audits. It is nothing different. It is just that आप quantitative number की जगह, एक financial number की जगह या revenue या cost की जगह, आप, you are just analyzing a different parameter. That's about it. Definitely, it is little judgmental. It involves a little bit of thinking because the parameters sometimes can be vague, can be gray, may not have a clear quantitative evidence to it, and may have more of a qualitative or a narrative evidence. So that's where your skill of judgment plays a very critical role when you are looking at non-financial information.
So Mr. Sailesh writes, which is the best framework of ESG to learn so that we can learn every aspect of ESG?
Okay, so the best framework to get a grip on personally will be the GRI, which is the most globally accepted, but it is huge. It is huge. So, like GRI is and very, very detailed. So what my personal suggestion would be that, you should rather try to read basic information explaining as to, what is E, what is S, and what is G. You can just believe me. I mean, Google, you may say that Google will not give you the right information, but right now, just to get a basic information, you need to go and read basic information on Google. Then you can go and look back at GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative. It is quite lengthy, but I think that's the best and very holistic. मतलब अगर आपने end to end वो पढ़ लिया, तो then I think you have sufficient amount of knowledge on ESG. And just to bring across this information also, the BRSR, which is mandatory for the top 1,000 listed companies, and is also a subset of GRI. So most of the indicators in the BRSR are taken out from GRI, and anywhere we get stuck in the BRSR as consultants, we go back to GRI to take reference. So, that's how big GRI is, and then comes, subsets are BRSR and so on. So I think GRI is the best one.
So whether ISAE 3000 assurance can be done only by CPAs or even we can do it?
We can also do it. There are organizations or firms who are already doing this.
So see, Bhagyashri is writing, are there any special courses available to do a career in ESG? So it will be answered later, I think, end of the section. Okay. So Suresh, Mr. Suresh writes, as a CA, how do I find out whether the data provided is correct for limited assurance? Like greenhouse gases given by them may not be correct, like everything emits now, days like air conditioners, computers, all electronic gadgets. So how can you find out the correctness?
On a sample basis, you will have to do data verification also. So, as I told you, the data is still not so evolved. So, even in case of limited assurance today, we still continue to do a bit of data verification, and evidence verification is necessary, especially because obviously the reliability of data, as rightly you yourself are saying, that the reliability of data is not very high. It is extremely important to do data verification. So you have to go back to documentary evidence to actually see this.
Okay. So CA Sivapriya writes, is there any certification required to take up ISO 14001 engagements?
Yes, you have to be, so advisory engagements, consulting engagements, yes, you can take up. But if you have to be a verifier or, certify it, then you have to go in for a certification course. So you can just log into the ISO website and you can find it there. And any of the certification course which are available there, if you do it, there is a series, there is an exam. And then once you clear that exam, you are certified to provide, verification based on ISO 14,000 series.
So the last question by Ronak Banker, he writes, do you see a future where CAs can partner with engineers, technical professionals to provide end-to-end services?
Absolutely, Ronak, this is like, just the bang on. This was something which I was going to mention very clearly. So see, please let us all understand that we are chartered accountants. We don't have the technical knowledge on the E pillar. Okay, so अगर मुझे कोई बोले कि ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस एमिशंस आप मुझे कैलकुलेट करके दे दो, I am not sure I can do it, because it is you need an engineering, you need a technical, you need a science background to understand this very, very in detail. So if you see any of the organizations today who are providing assurance services in ESG, you will have to have engineers and technical professionals in your team. Okay, so I personally am, some of my CA colleagues itself, they have a firm which does purely non-financial information audits only. And they do have a team of technical engineers who support them in this. So it is important, very much.
Okay. So Shama writes, is there any framework for sustainable financing or climate financing?
Yes, there are frameworks. So there is a framework by the EU, there is UN PRI guidelines. There are frameworks which are given by UN for sustainable finance and climate finance. But these are not regulatory. These are just guidance notes or recommendatory frameworks which are available right now. So currently this, especially, sustainable finance, climate finance is not regulated as of now. It's just basic guidance notes.
So ma'am, you would like to continue with the session, or there are 2-3 more questions? I think they are in.
I think I'll just continue with the session.
Yeah, because the questions are just pouring in.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sailesh can have a special session with
Priyanka. This subject is very interesting and it's a new subject now. So all want to know about more and more about this subject.
Yeah.
Actually, Chairman asked me to keep a full day session on that. But I hope we should have a brief in this session. Then we can plan for better for full day.
Definitely. So look, in the interest of time as well, we are already at 5:29. So I will this was the main part actually, the roles of a CA in ESG. So let me just how we can elaborate on these roles. So you can take 2 directions to avoid conflict of interest. One is an advisory role and one is an assurance provider. Okay, so 2 alternate routes. The third route is definitely in a corporate job, you can be steering the ESG agenda in your organizations. Many of you would have noticed that the ESG responsibility today lies with the CFO. Either it lies with the company secretary or it lies with the investor relations department. There are not many organizations who have a separate sustainability vertical as of yet. So this is also a huge opportunity for, the chartered accountants who are working in the corporate sector already. Okay, so the way I have broken this down is that I have broken them into different pieces like disclosures and reports. Then comes a social audits, GHG footprinting, etc. Under everything, I'll tell you what an advisor can do and what an assurance provider can do. Okay, so the first one is the BRSR. Just to give you a brief, BRSR is mandatory for 1,000 listed companies as of 31st March 2023. And this number is going to get increased every year, believe me. This is only a disclosure, which I mentioned again. मतलब एक फॉर्म है, सेबी ने दिया है, ये फॉर्म आपको इस तरीके से भरना है. The BRSR is divided into 3 sections and 9 principles. There are essential indicators and there are leadership indicators. मतलब कुछ हैं जो कंपलसरी भरना ही है और कुछ हैं जो अगर आपके पास इंफॉर्मेशन है तो आप भर दीजिए, you will be ahead of others. Advisory role, if you are not a technical expert, there is a limited role. You can definitely support the organization in preparing a report. Assurance role, yes, huge opportunity for chartered accountants here, believe me. The BRSR core indicators. So SEBI has recently come out with a circular which says that there are certain core indicators, okay, core indicators inside the existing BRSR. Okay, there are some BRSR core indicators which have to be assured by, and this has become mandatory for top 150 listed entities and this number is going to increase year on year. So this is the opportunity, a big opportunity that we have as chartered accountants for audit of the BRSR core indicators. Again, just to bring back again, there are certain aspects that, we are capable of dealing with: governance, social aspects, but environmental aspects, there is a need for technical support as well. So engineers need to be a part of this. Otherwise, you may be able to fill a form, but what is the value add that you're giving to the client is also equally important. So that will come only when, there is the technical support as well, which is coming their way. Second is sustainability reports and integrated reports. So as I mention it again, sustainability report or an integrated report or an ESG report is only a disclosure. Disclosure मतलब जैसे हम साल के अंत में financial performance disclose करते हैं in the form of balance sheet and profit and loss account. Similarly, in form of sustainability report, integrated report, or ESG report, or that matter even BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability report, you are disclosing the ESG performance of a company. It is a yearly report. It is made for a period of year, means 1st April 2022 till 31st March 2023. What has been my ESG performance? As I told you, various standards and frameworks can be used, which we have discussed, briefly in the previous slides as well. And in an advisory role, yes, there can be huge support in the preparation of these reports. These reports are, huge reports. मतलब अगर crisp report अगर हम कहेंगे तो 30-40 पेज की होगी, और there are companies, who are doing too much on sustainability, have reports more than 100-200 pages reports also. So you can support in the preparation of report. Assurance role, yes, there are a lot of companies who are going in for assurance of their sustainability report and integrated report. This is the role that as chartered accountants, I think it's a huge opportunity for all of us. So this is the piece. Again, the standards which can be used for the assurance are the ones which I mentioned earlier. Whether it is global standards, whether it is Indian standards, both can be used by Indian chartered accountants currently, because nothing is mandatory right now in the regime. Everything is recommendatory in this particular regime. So this is how it is. And we can use these standards for assurance: 2 types of assurance: limited assurance, reasonable assurance, which I explained earlier. Most of the companies are going in for limited assurance currently, and nothing is mandatory right now. Let me just specify again, sustainability report में कुछ भी mandatory नहीं है. And BRSR is separate, sustainability report is separate. Please don't get, the reason why I'm emphasizing this more is because I get multiple questions on this. So BRSR अलग चीज है, sustainability report अलग चीज है. BRSR में बस अगले साल से, मतलब March 24, okay, it is going to be mandatory only for core indicators for top 150 listed companies. बाकी सबको mandatory नहीं है assurance अभी भी. Sustainability report, integrated report, ESG report, it is not mandatory. In India, it is just this section that you can see, here. This is what is mandatory. Nothing else is mandatory. Okay, let me just go to the next slide. Then I come to TCFD disclosures. Okay, so TCFD disclosure. TCFD is, Task Force on Financial Disclosures. TCFD is a climate risk assessment mechanism. Okay, basically climate की वजह से एक organization को क्या फर्क पड़ता है. This is what this report assesses. It is a disclosure. Okay, it is again nowadays companies, it's just beginning. Ideally, it is a yearly disclosure. Okay, to be done every year. TCFD discloses on governance, on strategy, on risk management, targets and metrics. This is all related to climate. Please, I am emphasizing again, it is only related to climate. In climate risk assessment, you do 2 things. One is physical risk assessment and the second is financial risk assessment. This is where, a huge role can be played by, we as chartered accountants. Advisory role. Assessment of how these identified risks can impact profit, cost, revenue, assets, and liabilities. this is what we have learned, right? So, how, profit going up and down, cost going up and down, revenue, assets, liabilities. ये तो हमने मतलब 5 साल यही देखा है बस. Okay. So I'll just give you a very basic example as to what I mean by, climate risk assessment. Very quickly, I'll give you. So for example, if there is a mining company, okay, mining company है, उसका site, Rajasthan में है. And Rajasthan में हम ये कह रहे हैं, in physical risk assessment, what we are trying to assess is that if the temperature increases in, after 5 years, अगर राजस्थान में उसकी site पे, if the temperature increases by 1 degree centigrade, and this information is all there, scientific information is available around this, as to अगर 5 साल के बाद में अगर 1 degree से, the temperature increases, what will be the effects on that particular site in Rajasthan? There will be drought. Okay, how temperature increase होने से, heat बढ़ जाएगी. There will be drought. There will be no water, etc., etc. Now, if I'm in a mining site, जमीन के नीचे मैं mining कर रही हूँ. So you imagine the amount of heat that will be there. And, obviously there are physical risk implications. There is so much of financial risk as well, right? So I will have to assess as to what will be my effect on profit, because obviously my employees will not be able to work. So अगर आज वो लोग 8 घंटे काम कर रहे हैं, इतनी गर्मी में इतने दिनों के बाद वो नहीं काम कर पाएंगे 8 घंटे. Their productivity will get lower. This productivity is going to affect my revenue. This is going to affect my profit. If I have to maintain that kind of, working environment, I have to ensure that I install certain cooling systems in the mines. So what will, this will give me some cost implications. मुझे मतलब इतना सारा capex डालना पड़ेगा ये सब install करने के लिए. And then do you think that that will impact my revenue? There is going to be asset, capex involved, etc. So these are the kind of assessments, thinking, strategically, thinking long term, associating, these mitigation measures with financial risks is what, chartered accountants can play a big role, advisory role in the TCFD disclosures. Second, assurance role. Yes, assurance of TCFD is also something that many organizations do, because yes, when you're giving this information out, there is so much of financial numbers that you're giving out, right? So obviously any of your stakeholders who is looking at a TCFD report, if it is assured, then definitely transparency, clarity, accuracy, etc., all plays a role. So assurance is better. But believe me, this is going to take a lot of time in India to evolve. It's going to take minimum of 6 to 7 years to get into the role of assurance. But there is a huge opportunity in the advisory role in the TCFD disclosures. There are many more disclosures like this, SBTI, science-based initiative, which is many of the organizations now you might be seeing are committing to SBTI. Even there, there is, so SBTI is basically targets, companies make commitments as to how they can reduce their emissions. हम 2030 तक 10%, energy efficiency लाएंगे, हम 2040 तक net zero बन जाएंगे, all of these kind of targets. So that is where also advisory role we can play, because that also involves assessing financial implications, futuristic predictions, etc. So, that's where chartered accountants can play a role. There is something by the name of green bonds and green debt securities. This is again a very evolving area. There are new circulars coming out every, second or third day. There is some change that is happening. So I'll just, green debt securities are, end use kind of bonds which are issued. So use of proceed bonds. And these bonds should be issued in, things like climate change adaptation. This also includes infrastructure development, circular economy, water management, solar projects, transition bonds, etc. And there is advisory role definitely that we can provide in terms of how these bonds have to be issued, etc. There is a huge amount of assurance role that can be played here, because there's a need, basis the circular, there is a need for having an independent third party verifier, okay, required for issuance also and for monitoring also. So there is pre-issue support which is required and post-issue support which is required. So the pre-issue support is obviously for verifying and certifying the processes, means project ka evaluation, is the project rightly, criteria sahi hai ki nahi, does this project qualify for financing under the GDS scheme or no, okay. Then post-issue support is management, which is obviously the use of proceeds. Is it basis the commitment, and verification and internal tracking, impact reporting. So these are certain areas where chartered accountants can play a greater role. Then definitely social audits. I think this is many of you would have heard, and maybe some of you could be certified also, with respect to social audits. So basically, social audit is a process of evaluating a company's social and environmental impact. It is covered. It includes a lot of policies, laws, functioning of public agencies is what it includes. I personally, obviously, this doesn't have any kind of the name itself suggests that there is not so much of an advisory role, but definitely you can, engage with those NGOs and so on and tell them ki bhai is tarike se kariye, but limited role definitely. Assurance role is where, we have a big role to play. So just let me read this out clearly. Social auditor means an individual registered with a self-regulatory organization under ICAI or any other such agency, may be specified by the board, who has qualified a certification program conducted by National Institute of Securities Market and holds a valid certificate. That person is allowed to conduct these social audits. And also the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of ICAI has issued standards, social audit standards, right from say 100 to 1600, which are talking about different kind of social aspects and how those audits need to be conducted. So this is again a huge scope for chartered accountants. Then comes GHG certifications and assurance. So GHG has a lot of certifications also, and it has assurance also. So I'm sure we all realize the difference between what is an assurance and what is a certification. So I will not get into those that side. But advisory role, as I told you, it's very, very limited. It requires huge amount of technical expertise. But assurance role, yes, there is huge scope and evolving scope, believe me. The greenhouse gases certification or assurance has to be used in multiple areas today. Okay, so there are mandates which have come out not only in India, but globally, which are requiring organizations to provide certified or assured greenhouse gas statements. So, to just bring clarity, if, we as chartered accountants using our auditing or assurance capabilities, our critical evaluation capabilities, our capability to assess anything very accurately in combination with a technical expert or somebody who, engineer, we can culminate this association or synergetically have a greater role to play, and these markets can be captured by chartered accountants, and we can actually steer these markets eventually. Okay, because I think nobody else can do an assurance as good as what chartered accountants today can do. So just I'll also bring a notice here that there are many technical assurance provider agencies who are not chartered accountants. They are engineers, but wo certificate say they are allowed to conduct these audits. Okay, or they are just practicing. So pehle to ye certifications hote hi nahi the jo ISO ke which I mentioned. They used to just practice it again and again, and they used to become. But they don't have that, I would say the caliber or that, matlab jazba bolo, of an auditor that is not existing, which I think we have by education. So I think a combination of a technical expert and chartered accountants can, this is a very large market that can be captured. And if you remember my previous slide, there are 450,000 more than that entities globally who are reporting on greenhouse gases. And now with these different mechanisms which I have stated here, it is going to get mandatory in times to come. So the first one being the cross-border adjustment mechanism by the European nation. This has been on the front pages of many newspapers in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I would say in very crude terms, a carbon tax, which is going to be imposed by European nations. So any exporter in India, if he is exporting goods to the European Union, he has to pay a charge for the carbon that he emits. And the charge will have to be paid eventually. It is going to take 2 years for the charge actually. So the financial implication will start after 2 years. But from 1st October 2023, it is mandatory for Indian exporters to the EU to submit the greenhouse gases report to them. And obviously, this eventually after a year requires assurance or verification. Till now, it is prescribed only for certain products. Okay, so only 6 products: iron and steel, fertilizers, cement, hydrogen, aluminium, and electricity. So it is just these 6 products till now which are getting exported. So, and this is going to increase, products will increase, and obviously the rules and regulations around this will increase. EcoVadis assessment, somebody mentioned the name. So EcoVadis assessment is how we judge. It's again a scoring mechanism mostly used by the suppliers. Even they ask for, matlab, aapke greenhouse gases certified hain kya, assured hain kya. So if you have assured greenhouse gases, your score becomes high. Similarly, DGSI, it is a ESG rating. It also asks this question. CDP, it asks this question. Investor is asking you today, ki bhai aapke greenhouse gases, because this is basic. Aaj to emissions to sabko disclose karna hai. They are asking, is it assured or no? GHG projects, so carbon projects. If I will not go into too much of technical stuff. CA Pinky madam in the beginning mentioned, about carbon credits, about carbon projects, and about how UN is regulating these. And, here also your greenhouse gases or those projects which are saving greenhouse gases have to be assured or verified or certified. So there is a huge role here. But yes, to put a caveat here, there is a need for technical expertise here. So this has to go hand in hand. Technical and chartered accountants can together, capture this market in a big way.
Like your father is doing technical work and you are doing this.
You could say that. Yes. So again, internal audit, a huge scope for chartered accountants. Believe me, all organizations today want to make their systems of non-financial information extremely strong. So, internal audit again becomes a very, very, very critical role which we can play. So, it is right from integrating internal audit mechanism into the core, matlab, strategy se leke, risk se leke, processes se leke, materiality level set karne tak, there is a huge scope for internal audit. So, that can be treated as an assurance service. Obviously, there is conflict of interest. So, generally many organizations are parking it under the advisory roles nowadays. And, along with the service of support in sustainability report or preparation of ESG report or preparation of BRSR, this internal audit is, taken as a value add and provided that, apart from preparing, we will also verify and check your non-financial information. We will not give you an assurance statement. It's an internal audit process. So huge scope for chartered accountants here. And there is a need. Believe me, the systems are not in place, are not strong. There are no policies, limited policies. I'll not put it as no policies. limited policies, no formal procedures, no formal processes around non-financial information, and hence a huge scope for the internal auditors. Then also there are certain more aspects for assurance roles, water risk management, water risk assessment, like I told you, climate risk assessment, TCFD. इसी तरीके से water risk assessment करते हैं कि मतलब because of drought यहाँ पे water level कितना रहेगा after so many years, and all that information can also get assured. Waste management, environmental law compliances, there are so many environmental laws in place. Are the companies complying with these environmental laws? There are energy audits, energy efficiency audits, but definitely for this you need to be a prescribed energy auditor by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So all that is also a huge role that assurance can bring about. But definitely there is, I mean, as the way you read it itself, we realize that there is a need for having a technical expert here as well. Again, one more aspect I would want to bring to notice is social return on investment. This is another very important advisory role that chartered accountants can play. Social return on investment is a method of accounting for social, economic, and environmental value that is created by a company. Okay, so like companies issue financial statements and show the investors are shown the revenue, sales, profits, etc. SROI is still not a factor which is considered there. So SROI actually helps the organization to look at their social impact in financial terms. So there are methodologies or calculation techniques to calculate this SROI. So the factors that go into calculating SROI are social impact value and the initial investment amount. So this is, more of, this is something from an advisory perspective, chartered accountants can look into in detail. Then there are some more advisory roles which I think chartered accountants are capable of delivering. ESG strategy development, how an organization should look at ESG, what should it be, focus areas or material issues which we mentioned, and what are the kind of policies and procedures that you should have around this, what should be your KPIs, etc. Transaction advisory on renewable energy projects or any other projects, like there are so many new technologies which are coming in nowadays, like hydrogen exploration, techniques to finding low cost methods for hydrogen, ammonia based projects. So there are so much that is happening in the green project space. Electric vehicles, looking for alternatives, carbon capture and carbon storage projects, etc. So there are a lot of new projects or new companies that are getting formed, new projects that are happening. There are a lot of carbon emission saving projects that are happening, a lot of CSR projects that are happening. So there is a lot of scope in advisory for transaction advisory and for due diligence. Everything project कर रहे हो, आप green कर रहे हो, कुछ भी कर रहे हो, project तो project है, IRR calculations, due diligence is something which is gives a huge scope to chartered accountants. So, at the last, I mean, we have gone through this whole journey, what is ESG and, what are the different frameworks, standards that are available to us, whether we want to take an advisory role or whether we want to take a role of an assurance, or we want to, steer, ESG inside our own organization. And why I really believe that, CAs can be instrumental in steering ESG in whatever role they play. Okay. See, ESG is finally a form of data collection because, it is a disclosure. Okay. And एक data तो चाहिए ना, quantitative या qualitative कुछ, मतलब आप evaluate क्या करोगे, So ESG is a form of data collection. As chartered accountants, we have a good understanding of social and governance aspects, environmental aspects. Yes, there is a need to have a technical synergy, collaboration, which is required. There is a huge amount of rigor in our CA curriculum itself, which emphasizes towards accountability, assurance, transparency, reporting, etc. ESG, is a quantifiable measure. Okay, please note this. It's a quantifiable measure of sustainability that enables businesses to enact realistic change and provide transparency to all its stakeholders. Finally, the quantifiable measure hai, okay? Chartered accountants can bring much needed clarity to investors, employees, customers, and other interested parties, because chartered accountancy as a profession imbibes a lot of trust. Okay, so, the trust and the clarity that we as chartered accountants can bring, I think no other profession can. The cornerstone of ESG is transparency and accountability. And, that is what chartered accountants are blessed, best placed to bear actually. And, we all know that ESG is something that is playing a big role in, stakeholder decision making, and definitely is fundamental in championing a sustainable future. So, as I feel that, chartered accountants can be really very, very instrumental in steering the ESG agenda, whether it is in the Indian scenario or whether it is in the global scenario. So, thank you so much. I mean, for the patient hearing. And I really thank everybody at WIRSC for, this opportunity to bring across this subject to all of you. My company's name is here, my phone number, my email ID is also here, and I will be, if I'm not able to answer any of your questions today, you always can ping me and write to me, and, we can definitely look at how we can, I can help you in any of these aspects. So yeah, we can take some questions now, right?
Yeah.
CA?
So few questions I think you answered already in your coming slides.
Yeah.
So one or two, like, won't the big firms have a greater market share in terms of assurance engagements for GHGA certification? So can small firms pull on in this? I think that also is being, you just said that there is a lot of scope and all, but you can just brief on how small firms can.
Definitely. So, big four firms, definitely, but even for small firms, there is a need for having, technical expertise. So it is not, you can start from, so the way I will want to explain it is that you can start from internal audits, okay, start and understand and help organizations as to how they can make their systems stronger with respect to the non-financial informations. That is when you gain that experience working with various companies. And then, you can actually pitch in for assurance of, GHG, or whether it is sustainability reporting, etc. Today, as rightly mentioned, big four firms occupy a larger market here. But, it's not that the smaller firms are not doing it. Believe me, there are organizations, smaller firms who are in the space of non-financial assurance today. And, as advising them on ESG and so on, I work very closely with one of such organization firms who is started by chartered accountants, and with technical supports of engineers. They are trying to explore as to how they can achieve this. So there is a market, don't worry. And this is evolving, believe me, this is evolving, and there is huge space. So GHG certification, मतलब big fours कर करके भी कितने करेंगे? 4,50,000 and more, believe me. And there is huge market which is unexplored. So this is just numbers, through channels, but there is much, much more that we can do.
Okay. So Mr. Maulik is writing, does fast technological changes part of ESG? Like, is that thing covered in ESG?
It could be. I mean, it really depends, what do you mean by fast technological change? Because if, from an ESG perspective, is that a risk or no? I really cannot comment. It depends in what sector are you. Matlab, if it is a IT sector, yes, it might be important for you, but maybe a manufacturing sector may not be so important for you. So it really depends upon which sector are you talking about.
Fine, ma'am. I think these are the ones which, and we already covered all.
Yeah.
So, thank you, ma'am. Who is extending the vote of thanks? Should I?
Yes, Yeah, it's a very good and very knowledgeable session, and we all got many idea about ESG and role of auditor. And beside role of auditor, what is ESG and what is included in ESG full form? We know in full form of ESG only, but the coverage of ESG and how it different from CSR and other social aspects. So well covered by Priyanka, and I'm getting the uh, this what can I say
Wonderful
response
session.
from the participant also,
Yeah.
that it was very great session and they informative session, and they want more and more on this topic.
Correct.
So, and all have joined till day 6 p.m. Then that will be the great presentation from your side. And see the chat, you can see the chat what they are writing, the pentas.
Yeah.
So thank you Priyanka for such elaborate session. And we would surely we will do a full day program on ESG. And I will ask all the participants to join physically, not virtually, at BKC ICI, when we will keep the full day program. So it will be, I think, more energetic. And if we will can see the participant in front of us, then it separate type of aura can be created, and you can get best participation. So I will request all the participants, if when we will organize full day event on ESG, please join in physical, and we will have a great opportunity, and we can find out how we can help in ESG. ESG actually it's our social responsibility, you can say. As a human being also, it's our social responsibility. So what we that is the only thing we can give to our future generation.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So we all should have a take part in that. So thank you Priyanka, and thank you Payalji for your participation and coordination for full time, and the question and answers session taken by you both. So thank you.
And Priyanka ma'am, Priyanka ma'am, can you just share your PPT? Many people are asking for the presentation. It was
and Vakar bhai, that's I know that people who are staying out of Mumbai, they can't join physically. That's why we are keeping few sessions like this, exceptional topics we are keeping virtual or in hybrid mode. But who can join physically, I am requesting all them to join physically if possible. Okay, so see, thank you. Thank you. We can close the session. And Priyanka, you can, if you possible, please share your PPT in chat box here, so all the participant can get. If you can copy paste.
Yes,
in chat box.
I hope I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can copy paste. You can drag and you can paste for everyone.
Trying to do that.
Otherwise, you can send me. I will paste here.
Just give me a moment. I'm just trying to do it, but yeah, it's just loading on.
So who want PPT right now? They have to stay for a few seconds.
I hope you got it.
Yes, we downloaded. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. We will meet.
Thank you, Pinky. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. We can close the session. Vinay ji, आप बंद कर सकते हो.